Welcome back to the Adventures Log. My name is CoachFliperon and today we will be covering my submission for Sekki Mercenary. This Adventures Guide submission is for the casual category. As such, it is a deck that doesn't have any restriction for its configuration yet, not fast enough to be considered a dedicated farming deck. However, this particular configuration is on the faster end of the casual spectrum and could very well be used as a dedicated farming deck if you don't like or have access to other more competitive options. The purpose of this configuration is to go very wide with a variety of evasive threats while keeping a high level of control over the game. We will achieve that by focusing on Sekki's passive to ramp an impressive number of blood and sapphire thresholds in the first 3 turns of the game. This configuration tends to do little damage during the first 2 or 3 turns of the game and then generate an impressive amount of damage on turn 4 and 5, at which point we will usually be winning the game. To review it, we will first take a look at Sekki's power, we'll then review party members, and lastly the deck list composition itself. You will also find in the video description below the list of cards, equipment, and mercenary used along how to find them. As always, to wrap things up, we will be putting the configuration to the test with a dungeon playthrough. First, let's take a look at the mercenary itself. Sekki is an Oni that can be found through the current rotation of the Kismet's resource pack. He has 16 starting health with a starting hand size of 7 and no additional charges. His power is draw 2 cards, then choose and discard a card with cost 2 or greater. It has 7 charges cost, but as you'll see later, there's a way to get to 7 charges really fast. His upgraded passive is for 1 cost, put target card you control into your hand. This is very valuable for this mercenary in particular, so you will be most definitely wanting to unlock this upgraded power as soon as possible if you plan to play him. His first passive is when you play a blood card, gain 2 health and gain a sapphire threshold. His other passive is when you play a sapphire card, gain a charge and gain a blood threshold. Party passive is at the start of the game, if you have a non-resource card in your hand with cost 0, draw a card. Now we're going to play the mercenary itself, but keep in mind this party passive is particularly strong in a lot of configuration that we've been using in PvE, and I wouldn't be surprised to see this mercenary be a staple for its party passives as well. For his shard grid, Sekki has an amazing access to everything in blood and sapphire up to 4 copies. He also has access to 1 of each artifacts. His deck will read can include up to 4 copies of any rogues, Onis, or quick cards in your deck. Overall, Sekki's strength lies in his very strong threshold and charge ramping capacities. Thresholds are, amongst other things, a means for the developer to add harder play requirements on more powerful cards. Being able to reach very high level of thresholds in the first few turns of the game can enable you to play very powerful cards earlier than they were meant to be played. He also has a very strong upgraded active power that enables you to get additional value out of very powerful deploy effects, like the ones from the Oni for instance. Now let us review the configuration itself. For our party composition we're going to use Clatterclank and B.E.B.O. Clatterclank has a party passive that reads at the start of the game, if you have more cards in your deck than each opposing champion, gain a charge. It seems a bit silly that we'd go with a gain a charge mercenary party passive with a active power of that cost 7, but in reality we're going to ramp a lot of charges, and often having 1 additional charge at the start of the game means that we're going to be able to use that power on turn 2 instead of turn 3, which would make a very big difference in terms of damage dealt in the shortest amount of time possible. For our second party passive, we're going to use B.E.B.O. B.E.B.O reads, at the start of the game, if you have less health than each opposing champion, create a worker bot and put it into play. Sekki starting with 16 health is very low, so most fights we're going to have a worker bot in play. And worker bot is a 1 cost artifact troop that is robot, it is 1/1 and it has defensive. The 2 main uses that we'll be using this worker bot for is to fuel Constable Talon to have 1 more troop to activate its mobilize power. We're also going to use the worker bot to fuel Graven Geist via blocking early troops that our opponent may have. As for the deck list, we're using a 16 resource base with 1 Acorn. This list has the lowest resource curve I've ever seen, and you'll find that 16 shards is more than enough for this configuration to literally assassinate your opponents. The big payoff for using Sekki is to very quickly be able to play the 2 new Oni cards that were released along with them. The first one is Swiftpaw Trickster. It is a 0 cost, 3 Sapphire Threshold, 2/2 unblockable troop that is quick, that also reads Deploy, Interrupt Target Action. We're also going to run the headpiece equipment for this card, that is the Oni Head Scarf, that changed the deploy power to be Interrupt Target card instead. This transformed this card into a 0 cost card that can interrupt anything from your opponent. If you pair that with the upgraded passive of Sekki, the one shot that helps you bring back the Swiftpaw Trickster back to your hand means that once you have that, you're likely going to be able to deny at least 2 turns from your opponent. And when you're able to ram these thresholds very quickly into a game, that's mean denying their second and third turn. There's not a lot of matches where if you deny the second and third turn of your opponent, you're not going to win. For the other payoff cards that we'll be running, we're going to use the Oni Assassin. It is a 0 cost with 6 blood threshold. It is a 1/1 with lethal that reads Deploy, destroy target opposing troop, destroy each opposing troop that shares a threat with that troop. This is essentially a board wipe for 0 cost. However, there's a massive threshold requirement for it. Thankfully, Sekki's passive enables us to reach these levels of threshold very quickly within a game. It's not usual for us to be able to play this card on turn 3 or 4 in most games, so this is going to be a very good tool to just clear out the board or solve a very hard to solve problem for the deck. We're also going to be running the Blade of Sekki with this card that also adds a line of text to its deploy effect that reads, this gets +1/+1 for each troop destroyed this way. Now, I have to mention that you don't need the Blade of Sekki for this list or configuration to work. However, it's a plus if you have it. I insist on that point because right now it's very hard to get and it fetches a very high price in the auction now, so if you have access to everything else and you don't have the Blade of Sekki, it's not a problem. You can still run the deck, you can still kill a lot of things with Oni Assassin, and yes, it's not going to be that big, but usually you'll be overkilling your opponent by a lot, so not having a 3, 4, 5 more damage from the Assassin shouldn't be too much of a problem. One of the most important things you'll notice with this list is that we're running only Sapphire Shards while playing many blood cards, not to mention the Oni Assassin with its 6 blood threshold. Thanks to Sekki's passive again, we'll be able to ram massive numbers of threshold very quickly. So to achieve our game plan, the first step is to play a Sapphire card on our first turn. We will be using a selection of 16 Sapphire 1 cost cards to achieve that. The first one is Cerulean Sky Mage. It is really just a 1/1 for 1 with flight in Sapphire, and that's all there is to it. You're never going to be using its activation power. You could, if you don't have the Cerulean Sky Mage, you could very well be using the Windborn Acolyte instead. It's a 1/1 flight for 1 in Sapphire, and I would do the same thing. The additional benefit of reading the Cerulean Sky Mage, however, is that it is a legendary card, and more often than not, the AI will prioritize legendary cards with their removal over other cards. That means that since he is a legendary card, often what will happen is that it will be protecting the other threats that you have just because of him being a legendary. Again, you can still run Windborn Acolyte in its place, and it's going to be fine, it's just slightly less optimal. As always, if you want 1 cost Sapphire cards, you're likely going to run Arcane Focus. And it is surely a card that everyone knows about if you like playing Sapphire, but in short, it is a 1 cost, 1 Sapphire threshold basic action that reads, look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put 1 of them into your hand, the remaining cards into your deck. It's just a way to replace the card, have some kind of selection, and in this case, generate us a blood threshold. The next card is Mindcall. It is a 1 cost, 1 Sapphire threshold basic action that reads, choose up to 2 cards into your hand, those cards get cost -1. Often this card is not useful at all if you draw it on turn 3 or 4, but the times where we have this on turn 1, we're very likely to win on turn 3, and often we can have some very explosive starts that will be chaining card on the first turn to a turn 2 victory. The last 1-cost card is not really a 1-cost card, it's Crackling Tide. It is a 2-cost action, quick action with a 1 Sapphire threshold that reads put target troop in its controller's hand, gain a charge. The trick here is that we're running the Tidal Boots equipment for it that modifies a card to have its cost reduced by 1. So essentially it becomes a 1-cost action that we can use on turn 1 to gain a blood threshold. One of the reasons we can use this on turn 1 even if we are on the play is that thanks to our party passive with B.E.B.O, we know that we'll be starting the game with at least 1 troop in play. So even if you don't have any other targets, you can still use a Crackling Tide on your worker bot at the start of the game to generate a blood threshold if you need to. The second step of our game plan is to have access to 3 Sapphire thresholds by the end of our second turn. The goal here is very easy, is that we want to enable Swiftpaw Trickster on our second turn most games, so that we can start denying our opponent from playing any cards and then just win by being very aggressive. To achieve that, we need to play a blood card on the first 2 turns, so either on turn 1 or on turn 2. To that end, we will be using a selection of 12 low-cost blood cards. First one is Glyph of Hatred. It is a 0-cost, 1 blood threshold basic action that reads target troop gets rage 1. Now, usually that wouldn't be enough to warrant playing this card, but we're running the Trinket of Hatred with it that transformed this card into a PvE staple. It changed the card to reads, instead of 1 troop, troops you control get rage 1. Since we're going to tend to go very wide with this list, with a lot of small troops, being able to give them rage 1 to all of your troops usually translate into anywhere between 5 to 15 more damage over the course of 2 turns. Most of the games where you play Glyph of Hatred, you will be winning fairly fast. The second card that we'll be running for low-cost blood cards to activate the Swiftpaw Trickster on turn 2 is the Sneakblade of the Milky Eye. It is a 1-cost, 1 blood threshold, 1/1 unblockable troop, Shin'hare Rogue, that reads, when a Shin'hare you control dies, this deals 1 damage to each opposing champion. Now, if it would be just that, we would still run this troop because it is unblockable. It works really well with Glyph of Hatred, and since we want to be aggressive and often we won't be able to clear all the blockers, having cards that can just ignore the blockers is really good in PvE. However, or more so, we're going to use the Sneaky Garment with it, and it transforms this card into a powerhouse. What it does is that when this deals combat damage to a champion, summon a Battle Hopper, which is a Shin'hare 0/1 troop. What happens is that not only when you attack do you generate a blocker for your opponent's next attack phase, it also means that the blockers that you use, if it dies, it's going to deal 1 damage to each opposing champion. And if you have more than 1 Sneakblade on the board, attack with them, generate 2 or 3 Battle Hoppers. When your opponent swing back on their next turn, you could be chump blocking with the Battle Hoppers and generating a lot of direct damage. I've had games where I generated upwards of 6 to 9 damage with the Sneakblades on the defensive, and that really adds up quickly. You don't need that much for this card to really grow out of proportion in terms of damage. And once you have a lot of Battle Hoppers on the board, even with 1 Sneakblade, often that's enough for them to attack. You block with the Battle Hoppers, and then they just die on the spot because all the Battle Hoppers did 1 damage to them. The last blood card that we'll be running is Graven Geist. This one is a 1-cost, 1 blood threshold, 1/1 troop with flight that has a few lines of text. The first one is your other troops in all zones have Scrounge 2. Get +2/+2. The other one is when a troop leaves your crypt, this gets +1/+1. The way we're going to activate Graven Geist power is that when we're going to put it into play, we're going to usually be able to have 2 troops in our crypt. The first one is likely going to be the worker bot that we start a game with. and often we can just chump block what any, you know, early troop that we put on the board. And as soon as you activate a scrunch for any cards, this one is going to be at least 3 attacks. So not only do you get a bigger troop because of the scrunch that you did on the troop that you just played, this one is going to get bigger on the attack as well. And it really gets out of it quickly. This is another way that we'll be using to ramp a decent amount of damage during the games. To wrap up the list, we'll be using 2 very efficient card draw engines. The first one is Dream Eagle. This is a 6 cost double Sapphire Threshold 4/4 with flight, but you'll notice that we'll never be playing the card itself. What we'll do is that we'll be using the Eagle Feathered Gloves that will add a new power to the card that reads, if you have 2 Sapphire Threshold, discard this card, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, put 1 of them into your hand, put the remaining cards into your deck. So this is a 0 cost way to replace that card and have a selection of 4 cards on top of that. This is extremely good. If you're on this list, you'll see that the Dream Eagles really make a lot of things possible with this list. And if you're running, in general, in PvE, a Sapphire base deck, and you have a glove equip that is open, I highly suggest that you run Dream Eagles. There's not a lot of scenarios where these are not best in slot glove equip for Sapphire decks. The last but not least card that we'll be using to draw a lot of cards is Console the Talon. If you've been playing a lot of PvP, you know, or even limited, you'll know that this card is extremely good at what it does. It is a 7 cost 2 Sapphire Threshold basic action that reads, mobilize, 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 draw 3 cards. Now, we already know that we'll be starting with a worker bot in play. There's a very high chance that we'll be playing a troop on the first turn as well, meaning that more often than not, we're able to console the Talon on the second turn. We even have games where we have Mindcall on the starting end, where we'll be able to console the Talon on the first turn of the game. And when you draw 3 cards and you have access to a metric ton of cards that cost 0 or 1, you can really flood the board quickly. Not only that, you'll be playing a lot of cards, meaning that you'll be having a lot of thresholds, therefore activating your Oni cards way faster. For gameplay, we will be doing a Great Machine Graveyard run. This dungeon is the last one you'll encounter in Adventure Zone 2, located east of the Adjacent Sea, just besides the ruins of Kukutan. The question with this configuration is not to know if we'll win, but rather how fast can we do it. And it's time to find out. Go to the first node and see what happens. This is not a very easy list to play, so even though I have a decent amount of experience with it right now, it's still very hard to evaluate the starting ends with the list, since there's a lot of choices and you need to plan your turns ahead a bit. One thing for sure is that most of the time, if you can go first, you will be doing it. As we mentioned in the deck list when we covered it, the goal here is to play a Sapphire card on the first turn. If you don't have a playable Sapphire card on the first turn, you cannot keep the hand. It's just not going to work. Now we see that this hand we have 1 Sapphire card that we can play on turn 1, and we also have a blood card that we can play on turn 2, ensuring that we can play Trickster if we draw it. Now we're only running 16 shards and we have 4 Sapphire shards in our starting game. This is really not good. You kind of want to spam a lot of cards. Since it's the first fight of the dungeon, I just want to be cautious, and we're going to keep that. There's the 2 main ingredients. The 2 cards that we have in hand draws replace themselves while, you know, getting us some selection, so we should be fine. It may not be an explosive start and we'll likely only win on turn 5, but you should have a good idea of how to run the deck with this. As expected, we started the game with a worker bot. We're at 16L and our opponent starts with 23, so there's no problem there. Play the first shard, and we're going to play Arcane Focus. By doing so, we're going to gain 1 charge and gain a blood threshold. Now this is very interesting. Mindcall is very good at accelerating our gameplay. However, Since we're already past the first turn at that point, being able to play Graven Geist, 2 Graven Geist on the second turn might be very good. Keep in mind that when we play the Dream Eagle for its power, we discard it, so it goes to the crypt. Meaning that on the first turn of our opponent, if he attacks with his troop, we're going to block with a worker bot, and we're going to be able to scrounge the second Graven Geist that we play on the next turn. And here it is, blocking. Make sure that we have a nice troop in our crypt. Now we're going to be able to play our second Sapphire Threshold. We can now use Dream Eagle to look for a card, likely a Trickster, but we were not able to find a Trickster. If we don't have a Trickster and we have an Assassin in our hand, we kind of want to spam Sapphire cards to make sure that we get to the right amount of thresholds very quickly. In this case, we could do that, or we could go with a Sneakblade of the Milky Eye. In this situation, I think the Sneakblade is going to be the faster way for us to win. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to play a Graven Geist first. Now enabling Scrounge for the Sneakblade itself. So we're going to do this. And then, since we're doing a Scrounge, Graven Geist is going to be 3 attack. Now we've got 2 3 attack troops on turn 2. We're going to have to get a very good draw on the next turn to have a kill on turn 4. However, things are looking great. Next turn we're going to attack for at least 6. And we even can get another Graven Geist on the board. We just drew a Swiftpaw Trickster. Things are perfect. Well, first step is to attack with these 2 for 6 damage. Not a small amount. We're going to play the Graven Geist and then pass the turn. Now this turn, one of the options that we have would be to block with 2 troops to be able to generate Scrounge with a Trickster, but if we do that, we lose one of the Graven Geist. However, I think we're going to generate more damage if we do that, so we're going to try it like that. We even remove 1 troop from our opponent, so that's fairly good. The other line of play is that we don't block with the Geist, we just chump block with the Battle Hopper to generate 1 damage, and then on the next turn we block, and then we can do Scrounge, and we have both of these Geist become very big. But I think I'm going to be a bit more greedy with that. We're just going to trade with this troop. We can't. Oh no, the Battle Hopper has 0. However, we can play the Swiftpaw Trickster while doing a Scrounge on it. This one will become 5 attack, and then we get to interrupt a card. And now we have 9 plus 3, that's 12 damage on the board on turn 4. So we're still very close for the kill here. See if we can manage to find it. So, 4th turn, we can use our power to draw 2 cards and discard a card that costs 2 or more. It's sad that we have to discard or cancel the Talon, but sometimes it happens. We just have to live with it. Playing the Arcane Focus gets another focus, that's perfect. Playing another focus gets us another blood threshold, so we're becoming very close to our goal of playing the Assassin. Already back to 2 charges here. Yeah, we're going to attack for 12 damage. We get a Battle Hopper to block. We're going to plot a Sneakblade, and when we block with this Battle Hopper, we're going to do 2 damage. So we were very close to kill on turn 4. We're going to use our one-shot to buy back the Trickster. Since we're playing it during our opponent's turn, it's like it never quit the board for him to be able to attack, but in reality we're just going to be able to interrupt another card. And this turn we're even able to interrupt, no, we're not able to interrupt 2 cards since we don't have resources, but if we would have 1 resources open, we would be able to interrupt a card with the Trickster. Then on their second card we play Crackling Tide on the Trickster, get it back, replay it, and interrupt a second card on the same turn. Super cool. Actually, do we have the kill? Oh, that's a good thing to try. I'm not sure how it works with the Sneakblade, but if he counts itself for the damage, we should have the kill there. If not, we're going to have the kill another way, but that's worth trying. And lo and behold, we got a kill on our technically before 5th turn. That wasn't interesting. So you see, with only the first game we did, overall, this is a deck that can win fast. It's just a lot of decisions, and you need to have a lot of experience with the deck and good instinct to know which hands are good and the kind of sequencing that you need to do in order to win. It's not an easy deck to play, but it's really fun. It gives you a lot of options, and I really enjoyed it so far. It's not a linear deck to play, and it does all sorts of nice things. This is an interesting end. We've got only one resource, but we've got Arcane Focus. And if we get any resource for our 2nd turn, we can Dream Eagle for the next one, and that's okay. This sense means that we'll be able to ramp a lot of blood threshold early in the game, which is good. The other line we could do is on the 1st turn, use Crackling Tide on one of the Cackler to remove a lot of damage that they can do very early in the game. I think we're going to keep this. We're going to try. We've got card draw. We can block one of the Cackler. We can return the other one to their hand. And most of this encounter is dealing with the early pressure. And we have a good ways to deal with it right now. So let's try that. We lost our first troop on the board, but that's okay. Now can we... Yeah, we're already at 12, so we're going to play Crackling Tide on their Cackler here on the next turn, just to be on the safe side, because if we don't draw a resource next, it's going to be a bit weird. Here it is, Tide on this Cackler, getting it by 1, down to 11. Pass the turn. So we want a resource, didn't get it, but we do get a blood card, so we play it, get a 2nd Sapphire Threshold. Now we can Dream Eagle. Ideally for a resource, but right now we can't for a resource. And we only have 1 troop on the board. We're unlikely to play the Console of the Talon. Sneakblade would be cool. However, I do want a Trickster. If we draw a Sapphire card, we're going to be very in a good position with the Trickster, but here having a slow start. Next turn we can do Arcane Focus. Missing on the Dream Eagle for a shard was really bad for us. Losing the Geist is not that bad, and we've got a Milky Eye that we'll be playing. Now Trickster is online, which is good. So we've had an aggressive game before. This is a controlling game. Even then, we're going to start doing a decent amount of damage quickly enough. This, interrupt the card, prevent our opponents from advancing their board. Now we can attack for 3. This time around we don't have a card. In this situation I think I'm going to go with Focus. We really need a shard. And here we are. So we have a shard. And power to draw 2 cards. An Assassin, that's perfect. Blood threshold for now. We could go with the Geist. Do we have 2 troops in the crypt? We do. So since we have multiple troops in the crypt, Geist is the way to go. Next turn we can play one of the Sky Mages, activate Scrounge, and make sure that our Geist will be decently fat. Or with a lot of attack at the very least. It's sad that we were not in a position to interrupt this card, but our ground troops right now, they all have unblockable. So it's really not a problem. We have another Trickster. We're 3 blood threshold in this. Actually this turn we can get up to 6 blood thresholds easy. First thing in order, I think we're going to look at the next card. Assassin, do we want another threshold for next turn? So Assassin is great. We're going to Branch a Sky Mage. Right? And then the other option would be to play another Sky Mage. Activate, yeah, get the Oni going. And remove this attacker. This is turn 4, right? Yeah, this is our turn 4. Attack with these. Now have 2 battle hoppers on the defensive. And we've got 2 Oni that we can play. Next turn we're going to be able to keep resources open for Crackling Tide, and we still have our one-shot ability. So basically the next 3 cards, they're just going to be interrupted. And that's the power of the Oni deck, is that you don't need a lot to just get a very strong tight grip on the game, preventing your opponent from doing anything for a very long time. Another Oni Assassin, that's great. We're just going to remove this guy. Sometimes I wish we would be able to target our own troops with the Oni Assassin, but that's not the case. It's a minor downside. Let's see, we attack with everything. We're still doing, like, here, we didn't do much this game and we stumbled around on the first 3 turns, but we're still attacking for a ton. We're making sure that our opponent is unable to play any cards, really. And we have a 0 cost board one in our hand. Like, there's not a lot of there's not a lot that our opponent can do to win this game. Even if he somehow would have a very strong champion power that would bypass playing a card, go under our interrupts, we would still be able on our next turn to use Oni Assassin to just wipe the board. And then we can do it twice if needed because we have Crackling Tide, or just interrupt 2 cards. Situation, we don't need to do much because we already have the win. But you can see that even though we're playing a lot of very low cost cards, with the threshold ramping that we get from our champion power, things are so intense. Like, you get a very strong package. And right now, you know, I'm explaining the cards. I'm still not very experienced with the list, even though I played at least a dozen dungeons with it. Well, some iterations of it. There's a lot of power behind this mercenary, and keep in mind that this is an aggressive list, and right now there's not really a good reason to go for control, but at some point we're going to get raids into the game, and longer controlling deck will be needed, and once we do, Sekki will likely be on top of the list. Like, it's a very strong mercenary. Oh, this is a cool example of what could be a very strong start. We've got Mindcall, we've got a Sneakblade, we've got Console the Talon, we've got Dream Eagle, so this game, turn 1 is going to be awesome. Alright, so what do? We do a Sapphire Shard first. We then play Mindcall on Console the Talon and the Sneakblade. We play the Sneakblade for free, getting a second Sapphire Threshold, activating our Dream Eagle. And yeah, that's not enough. Would have needed a second Mindcall to be able to play Console the Talon on the first turn. But that's okay. Well, usually you Mindcall for at least 1 blood troop and another 1 cost troop. You play both troop, you have 3 troops in play. Now you need 2 Mindcalls. You need 2 Mindcalls to be playing Console the Talon on the first turn, but sometimes it happens. What this means, however, is that our second turn is... First turn was still great. We're going to be able to play a free Console the Talon on the next turn. Look for a card with Dream Eagle. If we're able to find a Trickster, here it's going to be even better. No Trickster. We're going to have access to 2 resources. We will be consulting the Talon this time around, so we kind of want a troop that we can play. And we're going to play that troop. Attack with the Sneakblade, which will generate a battle hopper that we can use to console the Talon for free. Alright. That works. It's the second turn. Oh, we get a Glyph of Hatred. We've got Dream Eagle that we're going to discard to try and find a Trickster that we don't find. You know what? We're going to go with the Sneakblade. Play the Sneakblade with the Scrounge. And this encounter is awesome because you start with a lot of troops in your crypt. So if you have a Geist early in the game, things are going to be great. And this is the end of our second turn. Got a bunch of things going on. Next turn we're going to have 3 Battle Hoppers on the block. That will generate 6 damage if he decides to attack. We've got another Geist. This turn we're going to be able to use our champion power. Things are awesome. First I think we're going to do the Sky Mage. You know what? We're going to play the Geist and Scrounge. So that when we play the Sky Mage, we're going to Scrounge again and both keys will get upgraded. Oh, we could Scrounge twice. Do we Scrounge twice? Yeah, why not? Why not? Okay, we still have Glyph of Hatred. We can draw 2 more cards. We have 1 more resource available. Don't quite have the thresholds for Oni Assassin. However, we can most definitely do Glyph of Hatred now. And attack for 9. On the second turn. On the third turn, yeah, this is definitely a turn 4 kill. And we've got Crackling Tide on the ready. Now, because of the Sky Mage here, our opponent is less likely to attack. That's a shame because we would have killed them with this attack if they decided to attack. But yeah, because of the big troop, they're not attacking. So we're just going to swing for victory here on the next turn. No need to drag this longer than it should. Attacking for way more than needed on the 4th turn. Minus 28. That tends to work. Minus 28. That's a good number. And we're getting the Mercenary Challenge additional goal as that. That's great. On to the next fight. We're going to play against Vargar. I'm glad that we're seeing a lot of different types of hand with this deck, because there's a very wide range of things you could encounter with this list. The fact that we're running a lower amount of shards means that we have more cards in the list, more combination of cards, and it tends to get complicated. But this is my kind of list. I really love it. I cannot wait to have encounters in the game where we'll need to play control. And the first thing I'll do when that happens, that I will be playing some kind of Sekki configuration for sure. This is a great starting in. We have a Swiftpaw, we have Dream Eagle, we have Blood card, we have a 1-cost Sapphire card. We've got all we need. All pieces of the buffalo, so to speak. Just going to Arcane Focus. Another Trickster, yes please. We're going to be able to play an Assassin very early in this game. So we're on the play, so that means that our opponent only gets to play a card on their first turn, and after that we're going to deny the next 3 or 4 turns worth of cards. What I'd like to see is a Glyph of Hatred next. That would be great. We do need to play the Geist to activate our Tricksters. Next step is to play the Dream Eagle and see what we get. Oh, we do get a Glyph of Hatred. That's great. We still have 1 resources open. We would only attack for 1 anyway, so really don't mind doing a Console of Talon on the second turn. We'll be able to play 2 Trickster before the start of the next turn. And then we Glyph of Hatred, and on turn 3 we're going to attack for a decent amount of damage. We can rebuy the Trickster with both the Crackling Tide and the 1-shot power on the swing back, so things are looking awesome here. Sure, you have a big troop. This is a bit of a problem because it's a flyer and it can block the Geist. That's a bit sad because it's going to prevent a decent amount of that aggression that we can do, but that's okay. I mean, can't really be mad when we play 2 Trickster on the before the start of our 3rd turn. And now we've got a decent attack force. We can even draw 2 more cards to see what we get. Oh, that's sad having to discard the Dream Eagle, but that's okay. Now we have at least 2 troops in our crypt. The Sky Mage will make sure that the Geist is bigger. Well, that's great. After this attack, we can buy back 1 of the Trickster, so we need to make sure that we have access to 1 source before the end of the turn. So let's Arcane Focus, see what we get. A Shard. Go with the Sky Mage with this as a plan. Here, I think I want to remove the Bumblebot and just attack with everything. I play the Glyph of Hatred. Remove the Bumblebot. And then the coast is clear to attack. We're not going to interrupt the next card, but we're in a very good shape for doing a... We're close to 17. We're going to do what? 8 plus 5 plus 3, 4 if we can remove the blocker. And now we're playing a Shard. You'll notice that we just use our champion power, and guess what? We're going to be able to use it again. Oh, that is so sad. But got ourselves a Crackling Tide again. Going to attack with everything for very close to lethal. If not lethal, yeah, turn 4. That works. Man, I love this list. This is so great. I just enjoy the kind of puzzles that it generates. And I know, you know, this is very early with this mercenary. I know for a fact that people will come up with some crazy good ideas with this mercenary. They're going all to be awesome. I really concentrated this list around the 2 new Oni cards, and I wanted this to be as aggressive as I possibly could. And it turned out to be great, but I don't believe that this is optimal in any shape or form. We just have not a lot of experience so far with the mercenary, but this is a good list. I mean, you can use it. You can win most games on turn 4. It provides you with a lot of decision making. Yeah, and you have access to a lot of creativity with this kind of list. This is going to be interesting if we do this. We're going to start with 2 troops in play. Don't have ways to draw additional cards before 2nd turn, but if we don't draw... Yeah, I don't like this hand. There's no troops. We really want a troop. Now we're talking, and this is the hardest part here, is to decide the mulligans for this kind of deck. And this is where having a lot of experience makes a huge difference, both in terms of speed and in terms of consistency with your winning rates on turn 4. This is an awesome keep. So we know we're going to Mindcall. We're likely going to be able to... Well, we could just Mindcall, play the 2 Blood Troop, meaning that we're going to be able to play Trickster on turn 1. That's one very interesting proposition, and this is what we're going to do. We don't have any troops on the crypt, so playing these 2 will not generate a lot of things. The one thing we could do in this situation is that we could be very, very aggressive, play the Trickster, make sure that we have as many troops as possible on the board, play the Hatred, and we get 1 additional damage on turn 1. That doesn't seem too great, but we're able to get this one back into our hand on the next turn anyway. And if we draw a Shard, we'll be able to do both Arcane Focus and get this back into our hand. This does enable a fantastic turn 2 attack. More shards. Yeah, God, I have 16 shards in this deck. Come on. Alright, so we attack with everything. That's... well, that's 6. That's 10 damage on the second turn. Damage on the first turn. And now we're getting back this guy into our hand. And we're going to deny whatever next play our opponent has. Next turn we're going to attack for... if we get another... we get another Glyph. Could be... Power of Ruby gains 2 charges and get a lot of resources back. We definitely don't want this to resolve. And we're going to block with the Battle Hopper, doing 1 damage. And actually, would like to have 2 troops in the crypt to generate a scrounge to get the Geist bigger on our next turn. We have our champion power activated now, which we will do. Trickster and a Sneakblade, fantastic. Going to Sneakblade with scrounge. This one gets bigger. This one is already big. We can deny the next play of our opponent. Attack for... very close to a turn 3 kill. Do we have a turn 3 kill? No. Yeah, short by 1. Alright. No turn 3 kill. But it was close. Mindcall in the starting end is usually great. Really, really great sign. No sir. No can do. And we denied plays like all game from our opponent. And we're attacking for a ton of damage. The level of control that we're having on games and the level of aggression that we're generating is just insane. Like, it is not a combination that you should have very often in TCGs. Even in PvE, I'd even venture, I mean, this is extremely strong. And we're going to get another set released very soon. Just need 1 legendary 1 cost diamond or maybe blood card to really make this deck like go over the top. And 2 mind calls, Crackling Tides. Yeah, this is not what we want. We do want a shard. This is okay. This is good. This is actually pretty good. Against Cut, do we want to make sure that we have Trickster on this first turn? I think we do. Going to be a weird mix, but I think we do. So this, play the Sneakblade. Here we could... yeah, I'm going to Glyph a Fate Thread here just to make sure that we've got Trickster enabled. We don't have a lot going on outside of that. Next turn we're going to play the Trickster. Gain a charge, we're going to be at 4. Next turn we can get to 5. And then 6, 7 with a Crackling Tide. So that should be our game plan. Nope. Cut is very hard. I mean, even with good decks, Cut is always decently hard. So you really want to be careful with the Trickster. In this case, I think we want to... yeah, let's see what we draw first. Mindcall. So this is 5. We do need to play Crackling Tide to get to 7 at this point. Means we're only... yeah, we're going to attack with the troops that we have. And now we can Crackling Tides the Trickster. We're getting 2 charges out of that. We then can use this power. Wow, this is great. We have troops in the crypt? We don't. But I really love the other Sneakblade. We're going to Mindcall here because at this point it's just not very relevant, but it does provide us with charges. And now we have 2 Tricksters in hand. We're going to generate a decent amount of battle hoppers to do some direct damage. I'd be surprised that we get a turn 3 kill this time around, turn 4 kill this time around, but we're in a very good shape to control the narrative of the game. And we are going to use these 2 just to have at least 2 troops in the crypt in case we draw a Geist next. 2 damage there. We're going to Trickster this Mangler. Really controlling the pace of the game now. A shard with 3. This is not very great, but we're still generating a decent amount of damage. These 2 have rage still, so no turn 4 kill, but we may be able to get a turn. Yeah, we're definitely able to get a turn 5 here. I'm even going to go with the Trickster back in hand. He still has access to 5 resources, so we really want to deny anything that he could play at this point. He's likely going to be playing 2 cards this turn, so having these 2 here is great. An attack, that is fantastic. It means 4 damage to his face. And yep, our specs not going to happen. Oh no, you transformed. And just to make sure that we get enough damage going, we're going to use the second one unblockable. And while we're at it, Trickster, play the Trickster, trying to go over the top here. Do we get a Glyph? We don't, we draw a bunch of shards. That's sad. And then we just attack for the win. For 4, 8, 9 unblockable damage. Is it turn 4? Did we play a resource every turn? I feel like we played a resource every turn. This might just be turn 4 kill. Regardless, great game. This really showcases the power of the Oni. I hope that this inspired you to create decks with Sekki and try the new Oni cards. They are awesome. They work really well. They're powerful. I highly recommend them. And using your gold into the Kismet reserves right now is not that bad of an investment. If you get one of the legendary equipment for either one of the Oni cards, you're going to get a lot of platinum for them. And that will conclude our Adventurers Log entry for the week. As always, if you like the content, don't forget to support by liking, commenting on the video, and subscribing to the channel. A new Adventurers Log episode will be coming out every week, along with regular additional XTCG content. CoachFliperon signing off, hoping you'll be blessed with Kismet smile until we meet again. Bye.